I'm in the mission of reclaiming the word love. A lot of people will call it kindness, and yes, it is kindness, but I like to push the barriers a wee bit and say, let's talk about love, because that's basically what our organisation is trying to strive for. Project Lyttelton. So it started off in the mid-90s, and it's been a our town or a Main Street project. And in those first, say, 10 years, it sort of tended to focus on the historic. And then Wendy Everingham and myself came on board. And when there's a major shift like that, the culture tends to change. The previous version of it was run by Captain Cleaver, who used to do the Lyttelton Wellington ferry, and so he's a man on the bridge. So he would stand at the front and everyone was in rows and everyone would say yes to him. I mean, that's being putting it in a too tight a box, but it gives you a bit of a picture. Really nice guy. And then I come on from the sort of feminist point of view and have people in circles. And it's sort of different, and so the crowd dropped away, and so at one stage there was just a few of us, Wendy and I and just a couple of others really, and we spent about a year, 18 months working out what it was, how we were going to be and so on. So the nature of the Project Lyttelton changed. It moved more to being community centred. So we'd got a group of about 30 people together to see what it was they wanted, and we worked out a vision statement from there. And then we did a mind map of the various parts of the vision statement, and about 7-8 years ago, I happened to look at that mind map again and thought, my gosh, everything on that thing's been done. It was amazing. And so we realised we had to now do another visioning. And it's interesting over the years to see how we've changed. So in those early years, it was more about setting up things like farmers markets. We set up a time bank. It was sort of more of a doing phase with sort of activities and actions. Now, when we meet again about 6 months ago, it would have been more about things like affordable housing, wellness in the community, well-being. How can people feel connected? Sort of more, I would like to say it's more of a spiritual sort of quality to it. I've said all along, having had the background I have, I've said to people, we realise we're on a spiritual journey, and some of them say, oh, no, quite adamant that wasn't part of what they were on about. But now, I would think most people would realise that, and it's not in a church-fied way, in a spiritual way. So all of our meetings we open, not so much with karakia, but we open with a shared round where we're at and a gratitude. In 2000, 2001 and 2002, New Zealand conferences on spirit at work. And that was where I learned a lot of things from the speakers, and I could go on and on about that, but it's probably not as relevant. But things that I got introduced to at that stage was appreciative inquiry, which was huge. Open space technology. Things that I've picked up and used from that day forward. So when I describe Project Lyttelton, it's all of those things. It's important that we use appreciative inquiry, and I sort of just use it in general terms. I don't sort of go into the detail of it. But what it basically is focusing on what's going well, looking at what's going well. It's got a much nicer energy than what's going wrong. Wherever you place your attention, that grows. So start looking at what's going well and fan that. And then should something not happen very is falling over, look at the underlying values and see if they coincide with the values that is in the thing that's going well. And often it'll be the value of clear communication or something like that that's slipped by, and that's why the thing's gone downhill.
So how it was discovered in the US by David Cooper Ryder was that businesses that were floundering a bit would start looking at their problems, and the problems grew. So we realised that you've got to focus on what's going well, and it's got a much nicer energy, and it attracts people.
Now, I'm a bit of an introvert, so I stick at home a lot. But Wendy, she's an extrovert and she's out there. She had only been in New Zealand a matter of weeks, really, from living in Australia. Over there, she had done a lot with transport and did the Labour Party, help with the Labour Party, their stance on transport. So she knew a lot. So she came here and she looked around, and we've got all these, we're in a hill, basin, and all these little walkways. You didn't know whether people's backyards or not. And she is really an advocate of walking. And so we went to the council and said, how about naming these places? How about tidying them up? And they, how about mapping them? And they said yes to everything, and then said, but they couldn't do it. And Wendy just kept on saying, well, I'll do it. And then we engaged a cartoonist, and we drew a map of the town with all these pathways. And so it was completely sort of non-political sort of choice of project. No one could dislike it. And then when it was all done, every household got a copy of that cartoon map, and it was made as snakes and ladders. And then Wendy took people on walks on the different snakes and ladders. So it was adopting a project that was fun, that used her skills, and engaged people. And we did how we wanted to continue our work. Like, we wanted community involvement. So she sent out the cartoon to a lot of people and said, is this right? And people come back and say, that's spelt wrong, that road doesn't go there. It wasn't just a one-off thing. It made it feel as though the people in the town were creating the map.
What if we work together to see where we want to go? So that was one of the purposes behind me driving that thing about what's our vision for Lyttelton, not just Project Lyttelton, but as a community. And I think people still tend to think in silos and feel a certain safety in that. I think they feel there may be takeover bids or something, but it's to get that breadth, that dimension, that extra knowledge, that wisdom from a wide variety of people. And I've also already mentioned that of youth, getting young voice. And we older people are not used to that, and sort of almost frivolity gibbet feel that it's fly by night or something, or will they cover everything that needs to be done or something. There's anxiety around it. Things like housing, affordable housing. I mean, everyone's got to have a house to live in. And I remember a woman saying, what do you do to people that have everything? And she said, you need a universal gift like a butter knife. So if you get a butter knife, the person that's giving it to you recognises that you've got enough and you don't need any more.
Brilliant.
Sort of getting a universal symbol, because we get bigger and bigger and bigger, and other people haven't got their needs met. Yeah. How do we deal with that? And there's so many tools around, like land trusts and things that we can do all this. It's just changing the whole system. Needs to be radically looked at.
I'm good on the feel, I'm not so good on the detail of things, so I've got to seek detail out from other people. So at that time there was a conference in upstate New York on complementary currencies worldwide, so I went over to that. and thinking it was going to be one form, but reading Edgar Cahn's No More Throwaway People in the plane as I was going, and realised it was time banking. Came back and then realised, I'm not the sort of person that keeps ledgers of accounts and so on. That'll fall down quickly with me at the helm. So it took a wee while to get moving, but then we got Tyndall Foundation funding for 3 years, and that set us up. The same way, once you've got a time bank going, you can pay time credits for anything that's growing community. So I wanted people to understand that, so I wanted them to read the book. So I paid them in time credits for every chapter. They got a time credit. Doing thinking community work, it's built on reciprocity. You've got to do something, you both are needed. In the volunteer system, often it's the volunteers that are giving. And so it's sort of, the receivers don't have to give anything back. They might give their gratitude, but they don't have to, they're not part of the deal. That's what I love about time banking. Everyone is equal.
We think all the systems are in place, like banks and all of that. You know, we're all set up. We don't query whether there's a better way and whether it can be done at a grassroots level. And that's a lot of the stuff that I like to see happening. So with time banks and savings pools, that sort of thing is really amazing. And it's just taking, it's funny too, because when you talk to people about it, about a savings pool, they say, can you trust them? And you think, well, can you trust a bank?
Yeah.
We do, just because it's got a nice expensive looking building. We've talked about savings pools and time banks and that, but also here we've set up library of tools and things. We've got the Lift Library, which is feeds people information if they're looking in this area of thought, you know, where can they get information, inspiration from and so on. And it's good to have that. I feel in Lyttelton there's a lot of people that are, the general populace seems to be relatively educated on those issues. Like I remember a number of years ago now, someone saying, what's the time bank, and this person telling them all about it, and they weren't even a time bank member, but they knew all about it. And it started also, I've mentioned Living Economies, and they have a library, and it wasn't being used so much, so it was better if it would be somewhere being used. So a lot of those books are here, but it's been built on a lot since then.
To start off with, I think that's way back when I was, I was born to a family where I was loved, deeply loved. And I think that shows an immense, strong ground for anything. And it was a clergy family. And so I was brought up in that sort of area of community, really, the value of community. So that's sort of been my mental default mechanism.
Years ago, at the turn of the millennium, I ran 3 conferences New Zealand-wide on spirituality, spirit at work. And I got different speakers. That's where I met Peter Kimmick for the first time. But I had someone there that came and talked about appreciative inquiry. So that conference, although it was important for other people, it was important for me in many ways, because it introduced me to concepts like that. Also, at the end of the 3-year period, I thought, well, where's my place of work? Because I was just sort of drifting at that stage. And that's when I realised it was community. But it was at that conference.
Doing those conferences, it was a great learning curve for me. But at the end of them, you realise sometimes your time's come and you don't want to do it anymore. And I thought to myself, well, what's my job? What's my place of work? Here I'm talking about spirit at work. Where's my workplace? And it was then that I really identified it was my community.
I remember years ago,
Right.
or about 20 years ago, I was sort of thinking, where am I going in my life? And I pulled people together like Ruth Dyson and all that in this room and said, okay, this is, what's your advice? Where do I go from? So I've always done that sort of thing.
Yes, you have.
Yeah.
I remember years ago with Jill, who has special needs. I felt at the school she was at the time, we weren't pushing her enough, and they were saying things like, it's time she could leave school now, we've taught her everything. And I thought, well, which other kid in this school do you say that to? So I pulled this team together, and Jill sat in the throne, and we had artists to draw all the things up on the board, so all her and her friends could understand what was going on. And we just asked, and she would say, I see you being able to catch a bus by yourself or something, and she would say yes or no, so she had the final pull on it. And that was a sort of an intentional process as well. And after that, everyone said to me, oh, I'd love that for myself. And we don't do that sort of stuff enough. So that's why I think partly why I want to do this thing on Saturday is to show people it's easy.
Just recently I facilitated an open space for the Muslim community post shootings. There was about 160 of them there. And when you're talking about the appreciative inquiry, you're saying the questions you ask, which implies listening. And this event that I ran in open space, I don't know whether you're very familiar with open space, but you open it up and there's nothing in there, there's no agenda. There's only a few bits of paper where people are going to write up what they're going to talk about. So the agenda is made. There's an overarching question, very broad, that sort of houses the questions that you might ask. And then you set to and do it. And these people, you could palpably feel the shift in them when you're in the room with them. They suddenly felt heard.
I think listening is important. I would like to say I listen well, but I realise I don't always. So it's nice hearing.
I think often you're holding a space, so you are listening maybe underneath as well. Like it's like there's always chatter in a meeting, and then you'll sometimes just go, but how about mimicking nature? Or, like something like that. It's like, okay,
that's exactly what I'm talking about, Jacinda. All of a sudden there's that piece.
So I'm listening a little bit just underneath, at the aquifer underneath me.
And you learn from other people. One of the things that I've always admired in you is your ability to ask the naive question. So what's this about? When everyone's feigning that they know what it's about.
Yeah, that's right.
Or going down that little rabbit hole when it's like, we've lost.
Can we pull it back?
Yeah.
So it's important to have those people that ask the obvious questions.
Yeah.
I've got a friend, Helen Dew, who just went up to Auckland in the train with another person, and they had community conversations the whole time on the train, just from seat to seat with people that weren't on cell phones, and started conversations. It's that listening that's important, hugely important.
It's about having fun while we're doing everything, rather than being so sort of focused on, deadly serious on what the outcome's going to be. It's enjoying the ride and enjoying the relationships and just playing with. Would you like to play with me? Come round to my place and play.
Come into my sandbox. Absolutely.
Yeah. We had a garland of flowers, didn't we? That we could give both speakers as they came over Skype. they bent their head and we were able to
Put the garland
Oh,
on.
gorgeous, gorgeous.
Yes, yeah.
but just throwing those ideas out and it's sort of letting things happen and emerge. Right near the end, which was a powerful moment at that particular event, was you said, well, I've done all the money of getting this organised, we've got money left over, so we'll give it back to you. So we just went round giving out the $20 bills.
And I like when you're talking about that flat structure as well, and like you've always talked about, that getting people to write their own job descriptions. You describe to us how you can best play to your strengths. Yeah. And that's, would you say that that's really characteristic and unique to PL? Yeah.
Well, I don't know whether it's unique, but we like doing it. Yeah. But it's not easy flowing.
No.
Some of these ideas are really brilliant ideas. But actually getting them to play out sometimes has a few hiccups.
Yeah.
Last year, our manager resigned. We had just got him and he was great, really good, but he was also doing his PhD at the same time and he found it too much, so he had to resign. But as he resigned, he said, I don't think you as an organisation need a manager. So we decided we'd trial it. We're still trialling it and we're getting better and better systems, but we're wanting to get very, very flat. And so the different things like the rec centre, we're setting up a steering group, and on the board we're getting a 14-year-old. On the steering group we've got two 16-year-olds. We're consciously going out, trying to get a broader base of age, and having everyone having their say. So I don't want those kids there as token youth. We've got to shut up and let them talk. And we've got to make it an environment that they can feel they can talk.
It all comes down to the wider the diversity, the better the answer is going to be. So you need diversity. And I think too, particularly young people, we need to be pulling them in younger and younger and younger, not just 18-year-olds, 15, 13, 9. I don't know how young you go, but I'd like to see and know that they are being heard and not token, because it's very easy to run a meeting like you usually run a meeting, and that's a bit strange for young people possibly. I love looking out here because there's a vortex out there and you see the seagulls riding it. Do you notice that? They just swirl around and you sort of feel as though you're in a position of seeing how energy moves. And from time to time being here, you look out and you can sort of pour blessings really on all you see.
That's right.
And sometimes you see movement in a house way over there. You've no idea who lives in it, but you sort of send them a blessing.
Yeah.
And that thing around energy, this is sort of a sidestep really, but energy and seeing how it works is really quite important. Like when you go to meetings and it's stirring, can meetings be stirring? Yes, some of them can be, but you've got to get those notes or the things out instantly.
Yeah.
Otherwise the energy goes down quite quickly, and you get the notes a week later and think, what was that about? Oh yeah, I'll read that in the weekend. It's about something happens, a spark happens, and you're fanning it.
We had partnership with the council, and we had this money that they gave us for 2 years, quite a large sum, 80,000 per year to do this. End of year one, nothing seemed to be working. We were stymied at every point. We'd need to have information to actually plan we couldn't get contact with the players. We didn't know how many were playing or anything like that. And they would say, we would get the information, and then 3 or 4 weeks later you'd get it. It was frustrating. So I had said, we can't work this isn't partnership. So we need to stand taller. We need to ask bigger. We need to be bolder. So with that in mind, I wrote to the mayor, all the senior ones in council in Christchurch, and said, partnership is not working for us. For this reason, we are offering to return the money over. We can't work in this way. And then I said, and what's more, it doesn't bring us joy.
When you're working with a whole lot of volunteers and that, they've got to be enjoying themselves. Otherwise they're going to burn out, and why would you do it? And we do get caught up in the shoulds. And we've got to get out of that. We should get out of that. So just wrote and said that. I didn't know how the council would take that, because it's sort of a bit different. But they took it, and I think that was, really. I think that was what, that was what spurred them on.
So that was that standing courageously and raising your voice.
Yes,
and what's so interesting about it is council asked PL for a reason.
That's right.
Because of how we work and the joy we bring in many ways, right? And yet it was being beaten out of us. So isn't that an interesting thing? So as the people coming and asking and wanting the work to be done, the way they were looking at it and the way what was happening in the actual process meant that what we bring was being squashed. And so, just pointing that out so they could go, oh, frig.
Because isn't that our obligation, really, like our community, to be able to have that conversation, come back and say it's not working? Because then, of course, I'm sure many people are saying, trying to have that partnership, but we're in these stuck ways. But so we need the partner to be able to say, no, that's not happening. And that lovely confidence, just that steady confidence.
And the boldness, because I think a lot of us would have just kept trying to plow through it,
You're right.
And Margaret was the one that said, no, this
Hold
is
on
ridiculous.
the brakes. Hold on the brakes.
And that really created a very different response and possibility.
So what had been the learnings from that particular journey?
Be bold. Say what's in your heart. Don't cover it up. Don't modify it to suit the way things are done. It's like making an adventure. Where can we go with this? We live life so rich that we often just live it in the mediocre, and that's we've chosen that often, and we often think the life's a bit boring, but it's up to you, up to us to choose a path that has got adventure in it and fun, and then when that happens, the excitement sparks in other people. And you don't know what's going to happen. And I love that idea of chaos, where you've got chaos, but there's a pattern working out in chaos as it's sort of trying to move towards resolution of some sort. And I love chucking myself into chaos and seeing what happens. It's as though adventure is all physical. That's right. Top athletes sort of stuff. Whereas it can be much more than that. And I think physical stuff is really good and gives you adrenaline and all that sort of stuff. But I think the emotional stuff is deeper, and it can include both. And ability. And I think I've always said that I carry, I don't know whether it's using the term right, but carrying my heart on my sleeve. I think it's got a different meaning, but to me it means show your emotions. Don't worry about them. And making yourself vulnerable in front of people opens doors for people. I realised quite a few years ago I was probably a bit old to climb Mount Everest or anything like that anymore, but you can stretch boundaries in other directions, and that's quite cool.
I remember that I had an idea for something, and I was so blown away because I said, oh, I have this idea, and both Margaret and Wendy said, oh, great, go ahead, do that. And I was like, wow, that's weird, because most places make you earn your stripes before you can suggest something new. I'd been there a couple of weeks probably when they were like, great, that sounds interesting. If you have energy, go ahead and do that. And I remember just such a different culture.
Yeah.
But that idea of people suggesting things, why not? I mean, if you want to get the best out of everything out of the world, you've got to have a diversity and a wide diversity, wide range to get the best answer. So,
And no judgment about those things.
And you know, I might come up with what I think is a brilliant idea, but what I always liked was having the conversation around it, and it changes and morphs, and
that's that holding space, right?
Yeah.
It's like no ego. It's like, I may not like your idea, but if you've got energy for it, go for it.
Yeah, that's so true.
And either it will just run out.
yeah, I'm always been one that can start things off and easily pass it on to someone else. So there's a picture of, I think it's Sue Ellen with broad beans, a bowl of broad beans, sort of abundance. There's a picture of a little girl looking at the flower.
Oh, Jazz,
Yeah.
looking at the flower,
She's a teenager now, and that photo's when she's a little kid, just the wonder. There's a picture of the globe, sort of global, and then right down to the cellular level, covering all fields. There's an open book. People say, oh, are you a religious group? But it was really meant to be an open book. We like to keep it open so that everyone can see nothing hidden. Clear communications. Different people, different books at different times have been key. I mentioned Bruce Lipton before. His book was one of them. Frederick Laloux, Reinventing Organisations, was another one. When I read that, I thought, oh, there goes Project Lyttelton. We're all that, except we haven't done not anger management. What's that? Conflict resolution. So we did conflict resolution as well. Of course, and we're there. I laughed when he speaks. He speaks very quietly.
He does too.
And he said to me, it's subversive. People have got to really listen.
So he's a master manipulator.
Yeah. So for those who don't know who we mean by Ika, meaning Professor Edgar Kahn, the originator of time banking worldwide. He's an amazing man, and when he came here for our time bank birthday, I made sure he was billeted with me for a week. So I had those pearls of wisdom coming from him. That was great.
What do you remember of those wonderful pearls?
Well, before I've told you that I forget detail.
True.
I just absorb the content,
Yeah.
the feeling tone of a lot of things. But he, in the US, he was a lawyer. Some of his work was foundational. You know, there's about 30 bits of law in the US that are significant, and his is one of them. I'm trying to think of who else. You know, when I finish this interview, I'll think, because there's so many amazing people, and often it's just little snippets of it, like we mentioned Jacinda Ardern before, and her reaction to the shootings. That just filled me. Doing that work with the Muslim community after that open space thing, working with Rob, I just sort of talking with him more or less daily, and
I think what we've talked about, and that's what I wanted to talk back at, was how you said you've done a lot of your work in your 60s, and you said a lot of people do it earlier, but I think that's the power of your leadership, is that all of that stuff that's gone before you bring into now. So it doesn't look like, you don't make a lot of big song and dance about this work that you're doing, you know. It's just that you get on and you're doing it, and it's like the leadership as well. It's not like I'm out there in front, you know. It's like all this stuff that's going on underneath, the subterranean stuff.
It is.
And I think that comes with your age, right? And all that other stuff that's built to here, that you bring forth to here. You're so seen by this woman, and it's all beautiful, you know. It's not like based on, you know, what are your skills and, you know, whatever. Like, it's not like broken down. It's just more that what you were talking about, that you know, seeing that magnificence in people
and the essence.
That's right. Yeah.
Thinking while Jacinda was talking, as a person who teaches me about myself in the most gentle and kind ways, because I never come away from a conversation without having looked into my own heart. So I would say there's just so much there, inspiring, that, as I said, I just always come back and I've learned something new about the way I'm seeing the world. So.
And it's funny when we talk, remember you sent me something once and you said it was great bit of writing or something, and I read it and thought, oh yeah.
This is just my everyday way.
And I think I'd sort of stamped on your party, really.
That's okay, I'm okay with it. Yeah, sometimes it's that think bigger. You know, that I'm thinking too little, and that when you're talking about think big or that we think too little, I think that's a huge hallmark of the way you see the world.
I think too, though, with thinking big, you don't want to think big just for thinking big's sake, because it can get all those around you
Nothing happens,
and it gets too busy and frenetic. But it's sort of the potential to think that way.
And you don't have to do anything about it.
Yeah.
You can think it, and it can be big, and then you go, right, okay.
Yeah.
And move to the next.
And it's fun talking about it.
Yeah.
There's one thing that I've noticed that's changed in Project Lyttelton over the years. I remember at the beginning, I've always said, because the root of all my work was in that spirit at work, sort of a spirituality level, and I'm a daughter of clergy. I've studied theology, so it's, you know, that's a natural mechanism for me, and I see everyone as divine, and it just seems the natural way to go. At the beginning I would say things like, we're all on a spiritual journey, and some say, But I think if I said it now, most of them would say yes. So there's been quite a change in the 15 years. More acknowledgement, as if I think I understood what I'm meaning by that. It's not a religiosity, it's sort of touching the humaneness of us. I think we forget where we come from. We forget how magnificent we are, how we're designed to be amazing, and you know, it just sort of, we think little.
Yeah.
And the world creates us so, you know, the ads on TV, use such and such makeup or something, or teeth cleaner or something, to have confidence, or you know, there's always that subtleness about trying to undermine you, that you're not quite good enough. And we're magnificent beyond beings, and we've got powers that we don't even hardly touch on. I think the human being is even more brilliant than that. That we've got the ability to get into each other's minds, to do all sorts of things, and we just don't pick up on it yet. We sort of defer to what's already been created, and there's a whole wonderland there of stuff that of our abilities. And you know, talk now with my health, you know, I've been thinking about healing, and I still believe there's possibilities of healing, always. You look at a little scratch on your skin and it heals. How the hell does it do that? How does your body know how to do that? I remember kids taking a pot plant to school, a cactus, and at school it got cut right across the stem, and the next thing when they brought it home had this root coming out above the stem. I thought, how did that plant know to create a root cell out of what was the stem? You know, nature is amazing. He says the next Buddha might not be an individual, but a community practicing loving kindness. And I remember putting it in the newspaper once and saying, what if it was us? How would we act differently? Would we act differently? What would be our role? What if we looked at ourselves as that? Because in actual fact we are.
That's right.
And sort of with it goes sort of responsibilities, but responsibility seems a drag, heavy word. But sort of calling might be a better word. How can we live life knowing that we were the next Buddha?
What I want to say, and I've already alluded to it, is how magnificent we all are and how powerful we are beyond measure, and we don't often realise who we fully are. And if you could see yourself outside as someone else, you'd be in awe of them if you knew all about them. And how would you treat them, and what sort of stuff could possibly come out of those people, and that's us. So I'm really making a statement for the amazingness of creation, human and non-human.
I'm grateful for having this community, the ability to have an area to play. I'm grateful for the knowledge that's coming through, like how nature works, how everything mimics nature, how everything's interconnected. I love that richness I'm grateful for. It's like a whole deep, rich canvas, and we're all part of it. I just love that. That tinkle and that tin made me think of pineapple. Goodness knows why, but I'm grateful for lovely food. I'm grateful that my needs have been largely met. You know, like I'm grateful for the earthquake that it damaged my house, and now it's all insulated. I'm grateful for lots of people, for people everywhere, and I've already said nature, but just that I love a good storm. You realise how little control you've got. You know, you're just sort of in there. What's going to happen's going to happen. Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying and everything, it's just laying yourself out open.
That's right.
And letting what happens, happens. You read a lot of stuff about end of life stuff, and you think, I'm sort of looking forward to it in a way, wondering what that crossover will be like.